All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. SQL Dev DBA here, and today we're going to take a slightly different approach than we normally do. One of the things that I get asked about a lot, but I don't really talk about very much, is moving data around. And the reality is a lot of what I do revolves around at least on stream, a lot of what I do revolves just around like analyzing data and sometimes just fixing it or presenting it in Power BI, for example, maybe querying it to get data out of the system. But we never really talk about how I get data into the system. It's always just, hey, I downloaded it from Kaggle and I use the SQL Server import wizard, or maybe sometimes PowerShell, but it's usually part of the project. It's usually just a small snippet, and it's not something I've ever dedicated a stream to. And so that's what I want to do today, is just go over a few of the different methods that I use to import data into SQL Server. Now, this would require you to have some sort of version of SQL Server installed on your machine, or at least access to a SQL Server, and only maybe have SQL Server Management Studio installed on your machine. That's what I tend to do, is I have a SQL Server installed on a small machine that I don't really access ever. Instead, I access it from a different machine. I actually access that machine from this machine that I'm streaming from. So I have a streaming machine, I have a data access machine, which is also my sim racing server, and I also have two SQL servers, which are both independent machines. So that's really confusing for some people sometimes. And I just want to dedicate one simple stream to just getting data into SQL Server in any way, shape, or form. There are three methods we're going to talk about today. Number one is the import wizard. Number two is PowerShell, because PowerShell, I feel, is probably the most underutilized tool to get data into SQL Server. And we're going to talk about SSIS as well. We're going to build a small SSIS package. So let's take a look first. Let's do a quick tech check, because I have a different keyboard that's sort of off the shelf. If you, hopefully it loads. There we go. You may notice there's no empty spaces there. I actually took it from up there. It's overflowing with keyboards here, and it's starting to become a problem. I'm the problem, but it's starting to become a problem. I need help. So let's take a look at the keyboard today. What we have is the K5 Pro from Keychron, with quite a few different lighting features, none of which are really visible because I have some bright lights coming down. But it is a full-size keyboard, and it's also a mechanical keyboard with very low profile switches. So the switches are really, really close to the actual board. So if you're like a fan of chiclet style keys and you want to venture into the world of mechanical keyboards, the K5 Pro. I also have a couple other low profile ones, but low profile mechanical keyboards are going to be what you want to do if you still want to have some sort of feeling of chiclet style and still get into the mechanical world. All right, and then the mouse is, I wish I could say it's better than it really is. It's a bit disappointing, but it's a pretty good travel mouse. It's called the Logitech MX Anywhere. And so if you're used to like the features that the MX Master have, which I have two MX Masters around here, if you're used to those features and you want a sort of travel mouse, Logitech sort of recommends this as the MX Anywhere, which is you can take it anywhere. I think it's a good alternative to the Magic Mouse. If you like the style of the Magic Mouse and you want something that's a bit more comfortable, then this is definitely a good one. It's Bluetooth and has 3 devices, but honestly, not fantastic. Morse314, great to see you, Morse314. Thanks for being here. What switches do you have using for the K5 Pro? Honestly, I don't know. Let's see if I think I have a tool. every time I get a keyboard, I get one of those, like, you know, keyboard taker outer tools. So I know I had one in my drawer somewhere. So let's find out what switches this one uses. I will always just buy the keyboard, barely thinking about the switches. So it'll be very interesting to know which ones I'm using. Morse314 says, just curious. Well, now I am too. So we're gonna use this tool right here. For those who are not familiar with how mechanical keyboard tools work, here's the tool. I know it's probably a bit hard to see. Maybe against this is okay, yeah, but it has sort of like a divided prong that splits apart, sort of like tongs, reverse tongs. So you just put it around the key and then you lift straight up, and we can see reds. We got reds today. I think these are what Keychron calls optical reds. So that's the one, and they're fairly silent. Ooh, I can switch to the keyboard mic. Let's switch to the keyboard mic really quick. I'm not gonna talk. I'm just gonna type in random nonsense to the chat, and we'll see if we can get it to work. There we go. So hopefully that gave a good sense. This keyboard microphone over here usually captures it pretty good. So hopefully that was a good sound test of the red switches on these. All right, so let's continue here a little bit. What we're gonna do is take a look at a diagram that I had prepped in a prior stream. Okay. So, Morse314 says, sounds like red switches to me, like clogging on your desk. Yeah, kind of. I think they're in between. This would be in between, like, what the sound that's known as like creamy and clicky. So they're definitely, this would be passable in a office environment. I think I would not be upset if I heard this one in a. They have fairly heavy dampers, so they're not it's not very loud. There's other keyboards that I have that are way too clicky, but this one's definitely not. So I do enjoy typing on this one. I just barely do. The travel is very small, and so it's good if you don't like deep presses in your keyboard. I'm babbling a lot about this keyboard, aren't I? Let's take a look at the diagram. Okay, so this diagram again is something that I made for a stream in Spanish. It was like a 6-hour stream, and it was a lot of fun. There were a lot of career questions during that stream, and we had a lot of cool discussions. But basically, what came out of that is I tried to draw sort of a diagram of what an example of a team would look like, a data team, and that's what we have here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and wider. Hopefully that allows us to see a little bit better. But we would have everything. We covered everything from like leadership at the CTO, director, manager, and lead level. I'm currently a manager who has other managers reporting to him, so I guess that would technically make me a director, but the role that I play is usually more of an architect, which is over here. My primary role within the team, other than being a manager for like HR purposes and for leadership purposes, that sort of thing, and for signature chasing. I've always said that I work for my team. They don't work for me, so I go chase signatures. I, go clear their bandwidth if they need help. With resources or whatever it is I need to do for them. That's what I always do. But technically, like from a technical perspective, what I do is play the data architect role. I've also held the position of database administrator. I've held a data analyst. I currently work with a data engineer, and we work very closely together. So I also play that role as her coworker from time to time. And I've worked with business intelligence analysts, but as a data analyst, I sort of held the role of the business intelligence analyst. Moore said, "Oops, F." Oh, did you like leave for some reason? Did it like go away? Hopefully my Twitch isn't like failing on us. Ooh, the bitrate was a little weird. It still shows green. Hopefully I'm okay here. Hopefully I'm okay. Let's try. Okay, so business intelligence analyst sometimes will go hand in hand with data analysts. If the data analyst is analyzing data within a particular database and wants to present it, or if you just have a small team, the data analyst plays the same part as the business intelligence analyst. I have been sort of both of those. This chart could also represent Monday through Friday. It could represent me being a data architect for 2 days, and a database administrator for 2 days, data analyst for another day, and data engineer for, let's say, Friday. So that is sometimes within small teams, it's a typical thing as well. Morse314 says stream went bad for 15 seconds, but it's okay now. Thank you very much. I did see the bitrate go down, so hopefully we're okay. Hopefully there's no impact there. I appreciate it, Morse314. And then we have data scientists, which is sort of by its lonely self. That one, of course, has junior, mid, and senior level roles, but I honestly don't know enough about data science or data scientists. I've never had one on my team. I've worked with them before, but mostly as a provider of data, and I just let them do their thing and sort of sit and stare and marvel at what they do. My goal before starting these streams was actually to study and become a data scientist, but I decided to sort of stop and share what I know currently as an architect, analyst, engineer, etc. Share what I know currently and just make sure that I share as much information, and maybe in a year or two circle back to data scientist if the opportunity presents itself. All right, so here's the chart. And then here's a sort of a quick chart of technologies and different spaces within the data ecosystem that we work with. For example, cloud data sources, or really any data sources here, would result in files. Those files would be imported into the data warehouse, or by the data warehouse can be imported into any database platform, including Access. I know, but including Access. And then that data can then be used for several things, including business intelligence. So again, what we're going to look at today is several methods of ingesting files into a server. The server of my choice is SQL Server, but if you like, let's say, Oracle, you can probably play around a little bit with Live SQL for file ingestion, because they do have a file ingestion feature. For those who don't know, Live SQL is a completely free tool from Oracle. You can access it because you don't even have to download it. You can access it at livesql.oracle.com. And there's no install, there's no downloads. It's just you and an Oracle database. It's completely free and you can access it on any browser. So I can access it on my iPad if I really want to. So that is one way that you can just get started downloading CSVs from stuff like Kaggle and uploading them into Oracle using Live SQL. But what we're going to do is upload them into SQL Server. And so let's get started. The data set I'm going to be using today is sim racing telemetry data. Now, folks like Morse314 who have been following for such a long time, thank you, by the way, for always being here, and for your sub, of course, recently. Thank you. I used to do sim racing, just plain sim racing in my streams. And then about a year ago or so, I started using applications like this one here, Sim Racing Telemetry, to record all my telemetry data for all my sim races, and then subsequently download it, because they have a neat download feature called basically export to CSV. If I go into any particular session, here are all my sessions in a simulator called Automobilista 2. You can live record these sessions, or you can just go into prior sessions that it's previously recorded and you can export to CSV and it'll download the CSV version of the file. Now, this application records data about 10 times per second. And so what results in, you have about 10,000 lines of data for every lap that you complete, depending on how big the racetrack is. So it's very interesting and it's very plentiful. If anyone wants access to that data set, I'm happy to share it. I have a full folder on my Google Drive with sim racing telemetry in it. I'm going to go ahead and share that link in the chat. If you happen to be in Twitch and want access to this data, you can just click that link. It'll ask me for access and I will grant it to you. And there goes Pretzel Rocks, man. Oh my God. For a paid service to not have like great, like a good app is not fantastic. If anyone has any ideas on music, please let me know. All right. So, using this data here, any of the data, you can follow along with what I'm doing, or if you're watching on YouTube, there's going to be a link to this same exact folder in the description, right? Am I pointing to the right down there? And so the file that we're going to be using today is one of those files, which is, let's see if I can find it in the AMS2 folder. It is AMS2 _ spa _ Delara F3 race go setup blah blah blah. It's a big file name, but the reason for these file names, the reason I use these file names is so I can keep track of what they are without having to open the file. So I know this file is Automobilista 2. I know it's at the Spa circuit. I know the car I'm using is a Delara F3, so a Formula 3 car, and I know that it's a race. So, and then I also know at the very end, I know what date the session was on. So without even having to open the data or the file, I already know what it's about and I already sort of know what to expect. Now this is very interesting because the reality is, if I remember correctly, the different simulators will actually output different files when you're working with Sim Racing Telemetry's app. The file structure is different. So if I wanted to create logic that sort of handles each file in a different way, I have set myself up for success in my naming, because I get to just look at the file, or sorry, the file name, and if I find AMS2, I know it's an Automobilista 2 file. If I find ACC, I know it's a Assetto Corsa Competizione file. If I find F1 2024, I know it's F1 2024, etc., etc. And as you can see, there are plenty of simulators here. So it does, depending on how much data or how many games you play or how many simulators you use, it does get quite expansive. And there goes the music again. Maybe I just shouldn't have music. I've sort of gotten some requests to not have music, so maybe that is the route we can take as well, if things go south too long here. Let's see if I can get it up and running again. That's a yes. Okay. Hopefully it's not too loud either. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's take a look at the file. So I've been talking about this file for a long time, but not really looked at it. So what can I expect from this file? I can open it with applications like Notepad++. If you've watched my streams in the past, you know I strongly dislike Excel. And don't get me wrong, I like Excel as like a analysis tool, or like a, you know, to be able to present data to folks or send data to people, send quick analysis without having to create a full Power BI report or something like that. It's fantastic for that. It's fantastic for calculations, but it absolutely wants you to lose your job when it handles CSV files. Opening a CSV file in Excel is basically like saying, I would like to please corrupt this file. And so I never open a file that is destined for a import, I never open it in Excel because chances are it's going to ruin it for you. So I choose Notepad++. You may have some other text editor like, I don't know, Atom. Atom's another one, I think, but Atom's, I think, out of service or something. I'm not really sure. My preferred one is Notepad++. Another thing you can look for in Notepad++, and one of the things that I really like about it is that it shows all symbols. Sometimes when you're working with a vendor, that vendor may, by mistake, not put the correct characters that it needs to when it's creating a CSV file. And if you just look at it in any other application, you may not see the fact that they missed those characters. But Notepad++ has a feature called Show All Symbols, which is here in the view area. It says Show Symbol, and I have Show All Characters turned on. Sorry, it's Show All Characters. So what do I see here? When I turn it off, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off, Show Symbol, and uncheck Show All Characters. And what I see here is a standard tab delimited file. We can see that this is a tab delimited file only because there's spaces. This is not fixed width, by the way. Fixed width, everything would be perfectly aligned. This is tab delimited. And I can tell that because when I highlight here, all I highlight is one character. But there's a special character at the very end for each line, which is known as the carriage return and line feed. And for those of you who are about my age or older, you will remember that the carriage return is a feature of a typewriter where you literally, let's pretend this, if you look at the keyboard screen, pretend this is a typewriter. The carriage was going along the paper, and every line you would need to return the carriage back to its original position. That's the carriage return. And then there was a line feed, which was basically like a wheel at the end of the carriage that allowed you to feed the next line. And that's what enter. Some of you will have like a little arrow down and left arrow on your enter key, which this one does not, but that is symbolic of the line feed where it goes down a line and over to the left. So I don't know if this file has them or not, and I won't know until I go and try to import it and it fails. But with Notepad++, I can actually see, if I click on Show Symbol and Show All Characters, I can see CR and LF are sort of hidden in there. CR is carriage return, LF is line feed. So that's a really cool trick for Notepad++ users, is that you get to see symbols like that, and it's 100% free, of course. Notepad++ is Morse 314 asked an interesting question: is Notepad++ better than or equal to VS Code for handling character delimited files? I used to use Visual Studio to try to look at the files before I learned about Notepad++, and I would say that Notepad++ is very good at this type of stuff. It's very good at just previewing files and not affecting them in any way. Just like taking a look. It's like a good preview. When you're trying to manipulate those files, maybe VS Code would be better, but I don't like opening raw files in any platform other than like Notepad++, maybe Notepad, or any text editor, because that's all it is. It's just a text editor. VS Code might go, oh look, I've Clippy, like like Brent Ozar likes to say, might pop up and ask if you want help with your CSV file, and that's really not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to look at the raw data and handle and manipulate the file with a different process. So another feature of Notepad++ is you can see these orange arrows. That's indicative of a tab. So that's letting you know it's a tab delimited file. So there are no commas here in this CSV, comma separated values file. It's only tabs. So that's really important, because when you go import this using either PowerShell or SSIS or the import wizard like we're about to, you will need to make sure that it knows that it's a tab delimited file, because otherwise it's going to be looking for commas. It's never going to find them, and it's going to think all the values are just one big column. like Excel. Excel does that quite a lot, and then you have to do the text to columns or something like that feature? I don't know. I barely use it. Anyway, now let's take a look at one of the methods to get this file into the system or into SQL Server. Oh, here's a comma delimited file, similar file, but I went ahead and because a student that I was working on from Chile, she wanted to analyze fuel analysis for sim racing, depending on which car, which one can consume more fuel. I went ahead and converted these for her to be comma separated values instead, so that she could have an easier time analyzing them. And we analyzed some stuff together as well. Let me see if I can find the report. Here's one of the reports that we made for the fuel analysis, basically, which is just a sim racing analysis report that I made on a different stream. This one allows you to analyze data on different tracks. So this is Monaco, for example. Here we have Brands Hatch. Here we have Daytona with a Formula One car, and it's basically how much fuel was consumed per lap. We tried to do some correlations on the throttle percentage versus the fuel consumed. And then we have one where we have a track map, which is this one right here. If anyone wants to interact with this report, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to go ahead and pop the link into chat here. So if you open that link, you can open it on your phone, on your PC, wherever you want, and you can actually interact with the report. You can switch the car and track, and you'll see that it's dynamic and switches to Brands Hatch, for example, here for the map. Then you can see a couple other things that I did, like switching the values for everything from imperial to metric dynamically with just one click of a button. So this right here, this imperial button, will switch everything to miles per hour, gallons, miles, pressures in PSI and Fahrenheit. And then when you go to metric, it switches to be correct. Kilometers, liters, barometric pressure, and Celsius. So that's a cool feature as well that we did. All right, so let's get the file into SQL Server. Once we reviewed the file, which we just did, one of the first things I would do is just open up the table, the SQL Server Management Studio here, and we have a database called Data Driven Sim Racing. Now, that's where I store all of my files, and what I'm gonna do is actually, I'm gonna go ahead and just drop this table because we want to sort of start over again. Yeah, we want to start over again. Or I can just name it too. No, let's drop it. It's easy enough to create. I was doing a little bit of practice to make sure I didn't waste y'all's time here. Yeah, I want to go ahead and sign in. Cannot drop table. Super. I'm in the wrong database, I think. So I need to go to... Oh, you can actually... I learned this from Kendra Little. You can say Control U with the keyboard, and it'll go to use, like switch databases. So I can just type in data-driven sim racing here, and now I'm in data-driven sim racing. Gonna drop the table and comment that out because I don't want it to run by mistake. So now you can see that when I select from this table, it just doesn't exist. So the first step is to use the import wizard. That's the most common way, and that's actually the way that I expect most of my candidates to use when I'm interviewing for like a data analysis position, maybe like a data engineer position as well. Is I expect them to have, if it's a SQL Server environment and they say they have SQL Server on their resume, that's one of the things that I make sure to do as well. Is I make sure that I cater my interview, my technical interview, to whatever they have on their resume as their strongest database platform, if I can. If my strongest ones are Oracle and SQL Server, I am terrible at MySQL, I'm terrible at Postgres, I'm terrible at Supabase, I'm terrible at NoSQL, like MongoDB and MariaDB. I'm terrible at all of those. My concentration is always on Oracle and SQL Server. And so if I'm a shop, if I'm trying to get a job, I won't even try to go get a job that has Postgres as an administrator or architect, because I really just won't contribute enough. I'm at the point of my career where these are my two specialties. I chose them, And so that's the only ones that I like to apply for if I do apply. So when a data engineer or a data analyst or architect even comes in, I expect them to know their way around the import and export wizard in SQL Server Management Studio. It's really, really easy to use. And so we're going to right click on the database we want to import data to. We're going to choose tasks and we're going to choose import data. Now, this wizard will come up. I'll click next and it's going to ask me for a data source. Now, the data source is going to be a flat file data source. When I do that, it's going to bring me to a screen where it's going to allow me to pick what file I want to use. And I'm in the right folder. This is the EMS2 folder, but nothing's showing up. It's because it's only looking for text and I want to look for CSVs. So now I can see it and I just hit escape like a dummy. So let me try that again. Now I can see it and I'm going to look for the Spa de Lara file, which is this one right here. It's a CSV. I'm going to click open. And a lot of stuff happens here. It sort of reads the file initially and it asks me certain things about it, including the format. So it is delimited and it already sees that. They're asking for a text qualifier as well. I almost always just default this to the single or double quotes because most files will do that. And what this text qualifier does is if there is a value that has a comma inside of it, for example, a city and state or city and province, city comma province for address information, then that value will usually be surrounded with double quotes. And so that's what the text qualifier does, is lets the system know that anytime you see a quote, ignore the comma or the delimiter that is inside there. All right, so the header row delimiter, we know that's a CRLF, and the header rows to skip is 0 because we do have header rows that we need to see. There are some CSV files that you'll get from vendor that have a header of like, here's the total number of records, here's the date of the file, here's the name of the file, etc. Here's the system that generated it. And this feature, header rows to skip, allows you to skip 5 or 6 rows, depending on what the header contains, so that it doesn't get mixed in with the data. And then column names in the first row, we saw the file, we saw that it has column names in the first row, so we'll go ahead and use that feature. Then it asks you about the columns. And first off, it shows that the row delimiter is also CRLF, which it absolutely is. And the column delimiter is automatically selected to tab. Sometimes you will have to do this manually. It really just depends. Sometimes your delimiter can be a space. Sometimes your delimiter can be a tilde, a semicolon. There's all sorts of delimiters that you can use. Here's some examples. Vertical bar is my personal favorite because it's probably the least commonly used delimiter or value when you're typing normal text. So that's why I choose that. All right, so we have a tab delimited. Now we can see sort of a quick preview of all of our data. But one of the biggest pitfalls that I see people go through is they'll get to this screen here, which is the advanced screen. And I'll say silent. I ask them to talk through everything as they're doing it. And so they'll go to this screen. They pop around a couple of these. They might switch some data types. And then they'll go straight to the preview. And they'll click next. But 99% of the time, and I actually do this on purpose sometimes just to see if I can catch folks, 99% of the time, people are not realizing that the data type that SQL Server chooses by default is a string here, but 50 characters. And sometimes I'll put data that's 100 characters, 200 characters, 500 characters, just to see how they react. And more often than not, there is a error that is very common, and it's data would be truncated, is the red text that they're gonna get. So what we'll do is we'll actually set car ID to maybe like 20 and track ID to 20, just so we can see that error in action. We'll choose a destination, and that destination is going to be inside SQL Server. We're going to use the Microsoft OLEDB provider for SQL Server. There's my server. I need to log in with a particular user. And I'm going to click, I'm going to open my databases just to make sure my user login worked, and it does. Then I'm going to click next. It's going to say, here's the name of the table that it's going to create. When you go to edit mappings, you can actually enable certain things like a drop and recreate of the destination table. You can say create it. It knows it needs to create it because it doesn't exist. It scanned the database really quick and looked for a table that's named the same way, and it didn't find one. So that's why it's telling me to do that. You can enable identity insert, which is if you have an identity column, it will insert it for you. Here, you can also, in your preview, just take a look at the data and how it looks. You can plainly see that Spa-Francorchamps, the track ID is going to be more than 20 characters. That's going to be pretty obvious right off the bat. But let's go for it anyway, just in case. So let's see what it does. And we immediately got an error. When we go to messages, which is what I expect them to do, by the way, I'm okay if they messed this part up and forgot, as long as when they get to this screen, they don't freeze. And I say that because a lot of people get to this screen where it's error and just fall apart. And it's okay. There's nerves, you know, all that stuff. There's always nerves from interviews, and you want to make a good impression, so you're sort of nervous, and that's okay. But I expect people to know enough about this to where it's sort of muscle memory, that when you get to this screen, you immediately go to either the report or just straight to messages and just start reading. That's what I expect, is for you to just start reading. You'll check out the little messages that it gives you, and immediately you can see failed because truncation occurred. Sometimes it'll tell you the row. So here it is, row 2. So you immediately know something's going on. And truncation is almost always the column is not big enough for the value, or literally that's what it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this. And I know we're going to have to start all over, but what we're going to do is drop the table again. Oh, it never created it in the first place, so we're okay. Sometimes it creates it before it tries. So let me just double check that. Yeah, okay, we're good. We're going to right click. We're going to go to tasks, and we're going to import the data. Then we're going to do this all again. We're going to pick flat file source. This time I'll speed through it a little bit quicker now. I'll choose CSV, and I will go to the Delara file. I'll open that up. Text qualifier set to quote. Go to columns, and this time, after I double check that it used a tab, this time I'm going to make sure that the columns are as big as possible. So let's do 4,000. Yep, we're going 4,000. And then down here, we're going 4,000 as well. And down here, we're going 4,000. And there's quite a few columns here. So how do I do this faster? Well, all I have to do is hold, or actually just click on car ID, which is the first one. Then hold shift and click on the very last one. And now it'll allow me to edit it for every single column at the same time. And now you can see that no matter what column I click on, it's always 4,000. So that's a quick trick, just in case you want to edit everything at the same time. Just click on the first one, hold shift, click on the last one, and now you can edit both the data type and the length of the value. So hopefully that helps some folks out if you didn't know that yet. All right, so next thing is, you may have noticed that I put everything at 4,000 and left everything as a string, even though I can clearly see in the preview a lot of these are just numbers. And why do I do that? Because we're talking about ETL here. And part of the ETL process is to create a staging environment, a decontamination environment, if you will. For those who have seen space type movies like The Martian, you'll know that when he comes out from Mars, or when he's out and out in Mars, he comes back into a sort of decontamination area, depressurization area. He takes, I don't know, he does all sorts of stuff to clean his suit, and then he's allowed into the primary living area, right? I do the same thing with my data. I bring it in as is to SQL Server using the most universal data type I know of, which is varchar or nvarchar. I bring it in, and once inside SQL Server, that's when I manipulate it, check it against particular data types, and then I sort of ingest it into my what I call historical tables or primary tables for data holding. So that is one suggestion. If you don't currently take that approach and you find yourself having lots of issues when you're importing data, I highly recommend a staging table to get the data in first, and then you can do all sorts of manipulation. Some people will use things like global temporary tables to do that. That's all absolutely fine. For those who aren't aware of what global temporary tables are, they're just temp tables that persist throughout the entire server. So it doesn't matter what session you're in or what database you're on, you can still use that same temp table. They're denoted by a double # instead of a single one like temp tables are. So that is an interesting feature. All right, so didn't I say I was gonna breeze through this time? I sure did not. Okay, so now my destination is gonna be OLEDB rather for SQL Server. We're gonna go, and I can never type and talk at the same time. Let's see, or at least not passwords. At least not passwords. Let's make sure it lets us in. It sure does. I'm gonna click next here, and here the DBO. I actually created a particular schema for this called ETL instead. So I'm going to use the ETL schema instead of DBO. DBO is where I want my final versions to be instead of in ETL, the ETL area, the staging area. So we're going to preview that data again, make sure it looks good, hit close, and now I think this should work. Let's try it. All right. So it works. Now, something that you'll see here is that it's trying as fast as it can. And it's doing pretty well. But what's the problem? The problem is I have 10,000 plus rows. Maybe more. Actually, I think this one might have like 50,000 rows. And so I would normally just pop this through and then maybe go grab a coffee or something, because we're going to be here a while. And that's one of the things that you have to accept when you're using the import wizard from SQL Server, is it really depends on your machine and how much RAM it has, because you're now running this on your machine, and also the speed and the traffic that's going through the network and into SQL Server. So that is something that you definitely want to watch out for, is when you're using this wizard. If you're using it for a big file, be prepared to wait a while. But what if you didn't have to wait that long? What if there were a way where this would be done in a ridiculously short time? And what if that thing was installed on your machine already and you barely had to write some code to get it in there? And I know a lot of people might say like, hey, use Python. Please go for it. Go right ahead. I'm not saying don't use Python. I'm not going to be discussing Python because I only like to discuss things that I know enough about to be useful to you. I just do not know enough about Python, and I know I should, because, you know, I've said I'm a data architect and a data engineer, etc. But the reality is, I don't know enough about it, but I know it's really, really good at this as well. Pablo Herrera, hello, welcome. Thank you very much for the follow. Hope you are doing very well. I hope you're having a good holiday as well. Thanks for being with us. So again, I don't really know enough about Python to sort of use it, especially on stream, where, you know, I have a sense of responsibility to be able to share and educate. So we're at the 10,000 mark while I've been babbling on, right? And we're still not there. So what are we going to do? We're going to stop. We're going to stop. It looks like we don't have any errors. And really, when it comes to this data that I sent you all in the link above, and if you're watching this on YouTube after the recording, the link is going to be right here. If you're watching on Twitch and you want to look at the data, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to pop the link here again. There we go. Bowner Soup, it's great to see you. Bowner Soup asks, do you ever have issues with encoding UTF-8 and others? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It really just depends on usually the language that's being spoken or the language that the data is in. When I worked for a particular cartoon mouse, we had a sister office in Shanghai, and Shanghai would send us files of like employee data, and with non-standard coding or without expansive encoding, you would run into encoding issues. So we had to make sure that we switched our encoding, switched our data types as well, right? For non-Latin characters, you actually have to use things like nvarchar instead of varchar, because nvarchar is much more expansive in the character set. So yeah, character set and encoding are a huge part. I take it as it comes. You know, I'll solve the problem as it comes. I'll usually weed down what character it was and then try to solve it here using things like collate, using things like TriCast as well, which we discussed yesterday during our stream. All right, so it's still going, but I think I need to stop it. Yeah, it's 18,000 rows. It's okay. I know the data's coming in well. I went ahead and stopped it, so that's the failure that we're seeing. I'm gonna hit yes to quit, because I want to check in on this. We got 18,000 records in. Let's take a look at the file and see how much data is in here. If you open up the Delara file with something like Notepad++, and I go all the way down, I will see 48,000 lines. Now, you have to remember, this is a 5-lap race. I'm going to go back to Sim Racing Telemetry here and try to find this file. Here it is. This is a 5-lap race, and we have 50,000 records. So it's 10,000 records per line. This is like, you know, a data person's dream is to be able to have this many columns and this many lines. It takes data, again, about 10 times per second. And I think that's because I tuned it down. I think it's capable of more than that, but I won't get into that. It's a really cool app because it allows me to just actually analyze and study my own sessions. I get to create my own data playing a game, which is super fun. And by the way, if anyone has any requests for tracks, for cars to use, for sessions, let me know and I'll happily make the data for you. I did it for a student who was studying fuel analysis, as I mentioned earlier, and it was a lot of fun to create the data for her. I even sent her videos of the races, the sessions themselves, so that she could see them. I have them posted on my YouTube, but they're not public. I just gave her private links so that she could check them out. So yeah, if anyone wants any data custom, I'd be happy to make it for you with all sorts of different classes of cars and all sorts of different tracks in Automobilista 2 or Assetto Corsa Competizione, even F1. All right, so let's take a look at the file, and we can see again 48,000 lines. So again, it's going to be a lot of waiting. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, right? We were at 10,000 and it had been maybe 5 minutes, so we were okay. But what if you needed to be done quicker? What if there was a way to actually do it way quicker? I'm here to tell you that there is. It's been there all along, and it's called PowerShell. PowerShell is an object-oriented language, very similar to how Python is, very similar to C#. And what you can do is use PowerShell with a module called DBATools. DBATools is available at DBATools.io. You actually don't even download it. I put the link up there in the chat for anyone who wants to check it out. You don't even have to download DBATools. What you can actually do I have my, okay, yeah, I do have the chat box there. Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, you don't even have to download it. You actually go into PowerShell and you pull it as a module from PowerShell. Very similar to, again, how Python works. So with this code here, I was able to import the entire file into SQL Server. And I know it looks a lot, but that's actually because I want it to be very organized. The actual section of code that does the work is right here. That's it. But I created variables because I wanted to be able to dynamically adjust things. So let's go ahead and just rewrite this code, and I'll explain every step of the way what I'm doing. So again, for those of you who are not aware of DBATools, here is their website. They have lots of cool videos. The DBATools team is really cool. They have lots of videos on how to use it. They have how to import it, how to add it to your PowerShell module, videos on that. They have this wonderful book, which I actually have a copy of right up there. So if you're looking at the second camera, there's a bookshelf up here. I have a copy of that book, and it's really cool. It's called DBATools in the Month of Lunches. You can just have a digital copy if you wish. But basically, the premise behind it is they break it down into chunks that you could learn in 30 minutes at a time. So you can do it in a month of lunches. So it's pretty cool. And they also have a command library where it shows all sorts of cool things that you can do with DBATools to automate your life. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel, which is now here in the links, but a video on my YouTube channel on how to use PowerShell and DBATools to actually download all of your Power BI reports that you've deployed to your Power BI service, how to download and catalog them as well. Not just download like the list of workspaces and reports, but also back up the PBIX files automatically itself and import the data about them. So like the name, the user, the workspace, that sort of thing, directly into SQL Server without having to touch anything except maybe the enter key or something like that. And if you automate it, you actually don't have to touch anything at all. So it's pretty cool. Now, one of the commands, or the only command that I'm using, I'm going to Control F for import DBA-CSV. When I go to DBA-CSV, Chrissy Lemaire, she's the person that's usually on the videos, super cool, does a really great job explaining. So you'll see what it does. You'll see all the different options you have, and then you'll even see examples. This right here, for example, this import DBA-CSV will import the CSV file, housing.csv, into a particular SQL server and a particular database. The cool thing about import DBA-CSV is imagine you had to import the same file into 20 different SQL servers. You could still do that with just one line. Well, it would probably go to a couple lines, but all you have to do is name all the SQL servers that you want. And what about the flip side? What about the other side of that coin? What if you had to import 20 CSVs into one, or maybe 20 CSVs into 5 SQL servers? You can still do that by just saying, instead of the file, instead of saying the exact file name, all you have to do is leave the path as a directory, and it'll scan that directory for any CSVs and import all of them into its own table, or right, like each one will get its own table, or all of them into one table. And I actually did this about a year ago with all my sim racing files, but it's high time we do it again. So let's take a look. Let's go ahead and build our PowerShell code. Enough talking, right? Enough talking. I'm going to go ahead and copy this link here so that I can put it in the documentation, because by the time you see this on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll actually be able to just go straight to the link instead. For those of you who are not aware, a sharp sign or a pound sign, whatever you want to call it, that is how you comment in PowerShell. So if you want to comment just one line, that's the equivalent to the 2 hyphens. However, there's also open comment, which is less than comment, and close comment, so that you can create sort of blocks. So that's what I'm going to do here. And I'm just going to say created by, that's not how you spell created. Created by, ooh, are we close to add time? Yeah, we're close to add time. So let me just do this really quick, and then we'll drop it. We'll drop into ads really quick. SQL dev DBA, created date, 12/27/2024. I write dates incorrectly for those of you watching in Europe and the rest of the civilized world. I apologize. I write dates incorrectly. And then we have maybe created for, live on Twitch, importing sim racing data using DBATools. Okay, so I'm gonna do maybe a couple of these right here. I'm gonna do a couple tabs to make sure everything's aligned. Can I do that? No, it doesn't like that. So I guess I won't be doing a couple tabs. There we go. Okay, so this is a comment block which shows it. It shows the documentation here as well, so I don't actually need this. There we go. So let's go ahead and take a quick break for ads. We're going to play some GeoGuessr while we're doing the ad break. And then when we come back, we're going to go through this file or go through this code, rewrite it, and I'll explain everything about it. And then we'll import the file super easily. So let's go ahead and get over there. And I will see you in about 3 minutes. If you're subbed, like Morse314 is, feel free to play along GeoGuessr with me. Hopefully I don't embarrass myself this time. All right, I will see you in a few. All right, so let's go ahead and play some GeoGuessr here. Again, I hope I don't embarrass myself. I did quite a bit yesterday, like when I tried to say it was the Alamo, but it was really like a government building in Chile. That was pretty embarrassing. Let's go to city squares. And I'm probably going to do it again. Oh, Ciudad Olímpica. Oh no, Cidade Olímpica. Is that Portuguese? Is that Brazil? Is that how you Cidade Olímpica? I want to say that's, yeah, that's Portuguese. Okay, we're in Brazil. I don't know where in Brazil. I don't know if they held the Olympic Games in Sao Paulo or in Brasilia. That looks like a really cool stadium. Okay, let's do some work here. Let's at least, or was it Rio? Oh man, am I gonna have to put it halfway? Okay, maybe there's something. Adultos, atención com as crianças. Parents, watch your children. Veículos en test vehicles. I don't know what the different states' flags look like in Brazil, so I apologize to my Brazilian friends. I'm just excited that I actually know where I am, or at least the country. I don't know where the Olympics were. And they had like Olympics and World Cup almost at the same time, so I'm just gonna have to guess in between them and see. It was real. It was real. All right, super cool. Libraries. Let's go to libraries and see if we can find anything. Okay, we are at Government of Sharjah. Isn't this the Emirati flag? I don't. Nope, it's not. No. I don't know where I am. I wish I did, but I really don't. Are they driving on the left here? Looks like we're driving on the left. Okay, is this... I really don't know. Somewhere around here, yes. I don't... Something is telling me UAE, but I don't think that's their flag. And I don't know enough about flags to know if it's like Saudi Arabia or UAE. I'm gonna just try UAE. Okay, it is UAE. Cool. I should have just oh, Sharjah. There it is. I probably am butchering that name. City squares. Let's see. We have a Sibija or Sibila. Something here is too blurry and I can't see it. Welcome back from ads. Welcome back. I'm trying to wrap up my round here after sort of, actually we didn't do that poorly. We had Brazil and we had UAE, so that was pretty good. But right now I am lost. Cigarin. Latte takeaway. Is this Crohn's? Oh God, is this Sweden? I apologize to any of my Scandinavian friends. I'm about to embarrass myself here, aren't I? I'm gonna go with Sweden. even though I should probably go with something else like maybe Denmark or Finland. But I'm feeling, I wish I could see like some websites or something like that, because usually the websites will have a good domain. Let's just try Sweden. Something about it is telling me Sweden. So we'll go to Stockholm. And it, oh, was it at least Sweden? I don't see any country lines. Might have been Denmark. No, it was Sweden. Okay, same country at least. All right, we're good. We're good there. And do I want to risk it and play one more and waste people's time? Yes, we're gonna play one more. Okay, so this is a castle. I'm getting strong Japan vibes, but GeoGuessr is always very deceiving when it comes to that. So I'm not sure. And even if it is Japan, like I don't know what island I'm on, what prefecture, so I don't know. Miroso HD, hola. Today is, well, I'm gonna try to do both today. I don't know how it's gonna work, but I'm gonna try to do both. But usually I'll do either, I'll do them both on the same day. I hope you are well, Miroso. Hope you're doing very well. I am, regardless of what language it is, I'm definitely going to embarrass myself right now because I don't know. And it might not even be Japan. That'll be even worse. But we'll go with something not Osaka. It looks too calm to be Osaka. Maybe Kyoto? Where is Kyoto? I'm pretending here that I know what I'm doing, but I really just don't know. I don't know which island. And we're just going to waste time here. So let me just pick one. Man, I could have sworn. Anyway, let's go over here and see. It's probably not even Japan. Oh, it is Japan. Okay. It was Osaka. Okay, cool. I thought Osaka was like a lot more busy as a city. That looks pretty calm over there. All right. Anyway, we didn't do that poorly today, so that's really good. Let's go back to our machine so we can talk about PowerShell. And Mira, so by the way, I'm going to be covering this exact topic in Spanish. Hopefully later today, maybe tomorrow. I'm not really sure. I'm gonna do my best to do it today, but we'll see. Okay, so we already looked at the SSIS import wizard, or sorry, the SQL Server import wizard. That was okay, but we saw that it was really slow. So I'm again trying to get this CSV file into SQL Server, and I want to do it quickly. How do I do that? Well, with PowerShell, there's DBATools, and if you don't know about DBATools, there is the website. You can, it's 100% free, and so is PowerShell as long as you're on a Windows machine. That's the only dependency, of course. Me also, HD dice, don't worry, I understand most of it in English too. Fantastic. You're welcome to stay. There's Bob Ross is on. Bob Ross is always on. So I won't be offended if you choose to watch Bob Ross instead. I would probably watch Bob Ross if I were watching Twitch right now. So thank you. Thanks for being around regardless. I hope you're having a good day with your family or just relaxing. Okay, so we're gonna try to just replicate these exact lines of code. I'm gonna rewrite them because I already wrote them, but I'm gonna rewrite them just to show you what they sort of do. So the first one is the set DBATools insecure connection, and that is basically just letting SQL Server or this session of PowerShell know that I'm okay that the connection is unsecure. This is my private network. It doesn't have access to outside. Usually you won't have to use this if you are at work because you have a secure connection, so you can take advantage of it. But if you don't have a secure connection, well, I have a secure connection, but if you happen to have a different network, you won't have to use this command. But if you experience like security issues inside PowerShell, just know that you can use this toggle here. Okay, so first thing I would do is I would say, okay, let's just do the import DBACSV command by itself. We'll get to these variables up here in a second, but the command says import DBACSV. It asks me for the SQL instance that I want, which is 10.0.0.20. And then it asks me, what database do you want? That database is called Data-Driven Sim Racing. Data-Driven Sim Racing. I think it's actually without the semicolon or without the quotes, like that. Then it asks me the schema, and the schema is ETL. Then it asks me the credentials, SQL credential, and here's where I would say SSIS user, which is the user I use for this. And next would be the delimiter, or I like to do the path, file path, no, dash path. The path would be, if we go over here, the path would be the folder, which is this right here, and the file name as well. So this is the file name that I want to import. I'm going to copy the name, go all the way over here, and you can start to see that it's kind of scrolling off of the page. How do I handle that? Well, all I have to do is wherever I want like a line break, all I have to use is use the, I don't even know what that thing is called. Reverse apostrophe. I know what it's called in Hawaii. It's called the okina in Hawaii and Japan. But I don't even know what it's called. It's not the tilde, because the tilde is like this. So I don't know what that character is called, but that one, the one that's right next to your one usually. So that's all you have to do to declare a next line, and it'll treat it like it's the same line. So now we're okay here. I'm going to put one more of those. And the next thing I want to do is tell it to the delimiter is a tab. How do I do that? I use the quotes. I use that same little character, whatever. I'm just going to call it the okina because that's all I know it as. And the T, that tells it it's a tab. If you want documentation on this and how to do it, you can plainly see here in the documentation that it shows you how to do tab delimited files. Let's see if I can find the delimiter here. The delimiter section says valid delimiters are T, vertical bar, semicolon, comma, and space. Tab, pipe, semicolon, space, and comma. There they are. So that's something you can always look to as the documentation. That's the delimiter. And then I also want a feature called auto create table. Auto create table, what it'll do is if the table does not exist, it's going to create it with the same name as the file right here. The same name as a file, unless you tell it what table you want this in. If you tell it the table, then it will name the table after whatever you want. And it'll also look for that table when it's going to try to create it. If it exists, it'll just add to it. You could also tell it, I think, several other things, but these are the ones that I use. Okay, so we're able to do that. And that's okay. But what if, and you know what, let's just go ahead and run this and see if it works. ETL is the schema, SSI users, it's probably going to ask me a password. Does this exist? No, let's run it how it is right now, just like this, and see what it does. I just enter the password, and there it goes. There it goes. This is a little faster. Yes, this is a little faster than it used to be with the import wizard that we just tried. You can see the progress bar going along. Why? Because this uses a special format of bulk copy. I believe it's bulk copy, but here we can see that this took all of 21 seconds. And as you know, I stopped it after like 5 to 10 minutes, and we were at like 8,000 records, no, 18,000 records, something like that. This was able to import, and it even tells you how many records, I think, right? 48,000 records in 20 seconds. Look how many rows per second, 2,300 rows per second. That's pretty crazy. So again, if you're seeing issues with how slow data is coming into your SQL servers because of your SSIS or anything like that, please consider DBATools. It's 100% free, and you can run it inside of SSIS by using a command prompt form. So it is how I'm switching a lot of my big files when I import them, is through PowerShell. Okay, so that's the simple way. But what if you're changing things up a lot? Then you need something like what I have up here. Here, I use PowerShell variables to make it easy. So if the instance of SQL Server might change, what I'll do is take this out. I'll declare a variable called SQL instance, and I'll set it to that value. I'll declare another value, another variable, and then in PowerShell you just declare them with $signs. Another variable called database, and I will give it the value of data-driven sim racing. And then what I'm going to do is take this name, and that's where I'm going to put it, right here in the SQL instance. For the database, I'm going to take this value here with the dollar, and paste it here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start using the Okina again to skip to the next line for each one of these. So there's the database. Then we have the schema. So the schema is going to be $SQL schema equals ETL. And now we take the value and paste it here. Then we have the SQL credential. SQL credential is an interesting one. My recommendation, especially if you're importing multiple files or using loops or anything, is to use a variable called SQL credentials and set that to equals get credential. Why? Because what it'll do is while it's setting this value, it'll ask you for the credentials one time, and then it'll keep using that in the variable instead of asking you for every time. So I'm going to go ahead and say SQL credentials is my credential. And then my file path, I'm going to create a variable called file path and set that equal to this value here. And then instead, file path can go here as a variable. Even my delimiter, if I want to, I can set it to Okina T for tab. And now I have my delimiter. And what do we have here? Well, it's way cleaner, right? This is so much more clean than that single line that had just a lot of different things that could go wrong. Not only did we switch it to be one thing per line, like one value per line, but it's so much cleaner, and it allows me to just change the server or change the database or whatever it is without having to fight and without having to risk any errors. So that is something I always like to use, is line breaks and also variables whenever I can. All right, so let's go in here and we can see again that it successfully imported 48,000 records, but we're going to drop the table. And now the table does not exist. There we go. So let's go ahead and use PowerShell again to import the table and see how it goes. So it's going to ask me one time. And there we go. Now it's going. And again, this is probably something that was going to take, I would say, about 30 minutes with the SQL Server import wizard. And here it's like 21 seconds. So it cuts down your time quite a lot. All right. So we're done. And now we can see that there's again 48,000 records. We can select all the data in that table. And in Spanish, I actually did a really cool analysis yesterday during a stream that allowed me to create this report. For example, I showed people how to create a report like this in Power BI that shows the track map. And here, depending on the color, is the speed I'm at. So here's the velocity in kilometers per hour. You can see this red is the straight from the from turn 1 all the way to, I think this corner is called Lecombe. So you can see that I was basically just super high speed. You can see it by lap as well. I think lap 3, there was a pit, or maybe it was lap 4, something like that. Maybe lap 2. Yeah, lap 2, there was a safety car. So you can see that this is all green, meaning I was going very slowly. But in lap 3, it changes color to be red because I was going flat out here. So we have that. We have a summary by lap, which allows us to see for each lap what my brake and throttle were, what my max speed, and even during the lap, what I was doing. And then we have what started as a lap detail, which shows for each lap the accelerator and brake that I was applying. So that was pretty fun. Okay, so we do have the data. It's right here. You're more than welcome to do any sort of analysis. You can, like I always say, you can ask ChatGPT to give you like, hey, I have all these columns. What are some metrics that I can do to, or what are some questions that I can answer about this data for you? And it'll give you all sorts of questions if you just give it like the names of the columns. That's pretty cool. So you may be asking yourself, okay, he went on about how much faster PowerShell is, but why is PowerShell so much faster? Well, again, it uses, I believe it uses bulk copy. If you're not familiar with bulk copy, the person I would go to for PowerShell and SQL Server, I'm going to do a shout out to DBADuck. He has not streamed in a while, but he has some wonderful, wonderful streams on how to use PowerShell and SQL Server together. And one of the things that he goes over is this import CSV. And this right here is the important part. It uses .NET's super fast SQL bulk copy class. So it's actually running SQL bulk copy in the background. Morse 314 says he has classes, but they are paid. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you know, I understand where he's coming from because he puts in a lot of effort into them. So you know, it is, but it is justifiable in my opinion because he's such an expert. But you will be able to see some of his stuff for free, probably on his YouTube channel. And if he comes back on Twitch, I would love it if he came back on Twitch, but I'm sure he's a super busy person. But I would gladly pay for those classes. And I don't remember if I have actually paid for like 1 or 2. But here, again, I try to teach free stuff. It's just, you got to pay the bills somehow. So I completely understand them. And if anyone's looking for PowerShell and SQL Server classes, they are well worth the money. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Morse 314. He does have classes. Okay, so again, it uses SQL bulk copy. It's a super fast class from .NET that allows you to push data straight in. Morse 314 says they are good. Yes, yeah, absolutely. And again, a preview of that is his YouTube channel and his Twitch because he does share a lot of information for free. Okay, so that's how it gets the data in so fast. But there's another trick that it uses. Which isn't clear at first until you check the table. And what I'm going to do is open up the tables and refresh. And what I'll see here is this table that we just pushed into the ETL schema. Because again, this is my holding area, right? I do not want this to make it to full data. It has to be in my holding area so that then I can check it out, make sure it's good, and push it into the real table. What's special about this? Well, check this out. Look at all the columns. What's the data type? nvarchar max, nvarchar max, nvarchar max, nvarchar max, everywhere. Why? Because they know the easiest way to make this happen is to go straight to nvarchar max, get the data in as quickly as possible, and then you can worry about cleansing it, converting it to different data types. Their goal is to get data into the server. Import CSV. That's literally what it's called. The trick is you can actually create a table that has the data types that you want and tell it to import into that table instead. And that table can have the proper data structure that you need with the correct data type. So know that that is possible. If you so desire, you can definitely do that. That's always an option. But if you just want to get the data in the system, which this is what it does, this is what it specializes in, then it'll create them all as varchar max, and it's up to you, my dear friends, to take it from there. So that's DBATools. Let's talk about one more. And that one more is something that's not, how do I say this? It was used a long time ago, especially when I was up and coming as a data engineer or data analyst, data administrator, whatever. And it's been around for, okay, it's about to be 2025, so I would say at least 25 years. It was known previously as DTSX, or Data Transformation Services, or DTS. And now it's known as SSIS. And it has a sort of shiny new name, which Microsoft say is not the same thing, and that's called Azure Data Factory. But let's take a look at SSIS as a viable option, because, surprise, it is. Why? Because it's free. If you have at least SQL Server Standard Edition, so you pay for a standard license, SSIS is free. It's already included in your license. You may as well use it. If you have Express, obviously it's not included. If you have Developer Edition, it is included, and Developer Edition is free if you're just trying to learn it. And most of my audience is just people trying to learn. So if you're trying to learn, you can definitely use SSIS with SQL Server Developer Edition, which, spoiler alert, is exactly the same as Enterprise. You just can't use it for production. So let's jump into SSIS. And I happen to be using Visual Studio 2022 because I got a really cheap license on woot.com. I saw a license for like $40 for professional, so I went and grabbed it. But you can use Visual Studio Community Edition, or you can also use what's called SSDT, SQL Server Data Tools, which includes Visual Studio, like a very small version of Visual Studio, for SSIS, for SSAS, SQL Server Analysis Services, and SSRS, SQL Server Reporting Services. But why do I want to show SSIS? Because even, in my opinion, the godfather of SSIS, Andy Leonard, even he has been talking about how it's sort of starting to make a comeback. Maybe it didn't really go anywhere, but for the past decade or so, I've seen this happen. A lot of companies have switched to cloud because cloud's the future. Cloud is the future for about a month until you realize, oh, this costs money. Oh, this costs a lot of money. Every single time I'm running this, it costs me a lot of money. And so some companies are sort of going, oh, okay, hold on. We're only going to put in the cloud what we absolutely need to for business continuity, and we'll keep some other stuff. We'll go ahead and keep it if we don't absolutely need it in the cloud. I have my own personal story about how that happened to me. I have a SQL Dev DBA tenant, which includes an Azure workspace. And one Saturday, I decided to test Azure Data Factory and just SQL Server in general, Azure SQL, to try to see if I could import data into it successfully. And I did a couple imports of about 1 million records of New York, I think it was at JFK and LaGuardia weather data for about a year. It was like 1 million records. And then I get an alert on my phone. And my phone tells me, oh, hey, you've exceeded an alarm that you set up. Like a quick alarm that I had set up for like $100 or something like that. And it turns out that in that hour of work, I had spent $150 of my own money trying to get the data into Azure SQL, just playing around with it. And the worst part about this is that I panicked because I saw the usage going up and I dropped the tables. So not only did I have $150 to pay Microsoft, but I didn't even have any data to show for it. So after that, I put in a bunch of alerts and a bunch of like stops, and now I only pay about 15 cents per month if I just leave it running. I just pay about 15 cents a month for data. Sometimes it'll spike to like $20 if I'm doing some workloads, but I try not to do anything. Like, my goal with Azure SQL was to even allow you all to connect to my Azure SQL database so that I could show you different exercises and maybe provide those for you. But since I found, where is it? Live SQL. I found Live SQL shortly after, and it's just a data platform from Oracle that you can use right in your browser. You can create an account. It's 100% free. There's no downloads. There's no installs. I don't work for Oracle. A lot of people know that I'm not Oracle's biggest fan because a lot of their products are really, really expensive. But this is 100% free, and it's made for you, for a developer who's trying to learn. They even have what they call a dev gym, where they give you weekly, daily quizzes, exercises. They have sample data for you to work with. They have an application called QuickSQL, which lives inside of Live SQL, that creates data for you automatically. I actually have a YouTube video, maybe it'll be up there if you're watching this on YouTube, on how to use it to create artificial data for your testing. And it'll create 50,000 records for you, no problem. So that is something really important. So let's go back to SSIS, because that was a really, really long introduction to SSIS. So if you open up Visual Studio, whether it's SSDT, SQL Server Data Tools, which you can download for free, maybe if I'm on YouTube, if you're on YouTube, you might see the links down there. Right now, I don't really want to look for them because they take a while to find, but it's 100% free. And the cool thing is, you don't even need to have SSIS installed on your machine to be able to run SSIS packages. Visual Studio will use your machine, your computer, as the engine for SSIS if you're just developing. For example, I don't have SSIS installed on my machine, on my SQL Server here in my home lab. What I actually have is just Visual Studio, and it has SSIS components installed, and it runs them right on Visual Studio. So you know, if you're looking to follow along, you actually do not need SSIS installed on a server or even a SQL server to do this. You can move data from CSV to CSV or CSV to JSON if you really want to, that sort of thing. So know that that's an option. Okay, so I already have a package open, as you can see, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just start a brand new Visual Studio engine, and hopefully it doesn't kill my machine. I don't think it will. And what I'm going to do is just create a brand new project. I'm going to choose create a new project. And here I'm just going to search for SSIS, and I have integration services project available for me. Now, if you don't have this available to you, it's because you need to download the SSDT component. Again, there's going to be a link in the description, but you have to download SSDT, SQL Server Data Tools. If you have like Community Visual Studio, usually it does include them, but you might not be able to. So just in case you don't see integration services project here available, that's why you have to download SSDT. And here's install more tools and features if you like. I think VS Code has sort of similar functionality as well. I like to use the full-blown Visual Studio if I can to do this though. All right, so I'll start an integration services project. I'll call it SSIS ETL Twitch demo, and today's date. Everyone knows I'm very descriptive when I create my titles. It'll go ahead and create it in the default location. I'll hit create. And what we're going to do is we are going to create our first package. Now, the package is already created. There's a package.dtsx, and it's already here as well. It's already created. We are in the first package. So first thing I'm going to do is I want to target AMS2 as the file here. So maybe I'll say, maybe I'll rename this package to something like, here's the rename. I'll rename it to DDSR for data-driven sim racing imports, something like that. And now what I want to do is I want to add a source. So a source file. And something that's very interesting will show up in a second. But what I want to do is go to my sources here on the left. And you'll notice that if you're following along, what you're actually seeing is lots of additional stuff here. Amazon Redshift, AWS, Azure, JSON stuff. You're seeing a lot more here on my screen. That is because I have some free, for development, some free tools from Kingsway Soft that allow me to do lots more with SSIS. And so I think SSIS is making a comeback because of tools like this, because of extensions like this that just let you do more than the base SSIS. And if you want to download those tools, you can actually go to kingswaysoft.com. I'll leave the link here in the chat, and it'll also be in the description of the YouTube video. But you can go to Kingsway Soft, you can enter your first, last name, and email address, and they'll send you a link to your email. Now, again, this has to be for developer use. You can't automate this. You can't use it for production data. It has to be for developer use. So if you are a student, if you're learning and curious, if you're testing it to see if it's something that works for your organization, they're cool with all of that. You just can't use it for production. So we're going to go ahead and add a task. And that task is not going to be part of Kingsway Soft. It's just going to be a data flow task because I want data to flow. So this data flow is going to be called import AMS to CSV because it's the Automobilista one. So I'm going to go inside of this, and you'll see that the toolbox changed. And if you don't have the toolbox, you'll just go to view, and I think there's like an SSIS toolbox somewhere around here. View toolbars, somewhere around here. You'll be able to find it. Maybe it's in tools. I'm not 100% sure. But if you don't see it, you just have to search for the SSIS toolbox. Okay, so I'm in the data flow task, and I want to add everything, or most things have a source, some sort of transformation, and a destination. Or you can just have a source and a destination, and that's it. So we're going to try to keep it simple and just have a source and a destination. Let's do a source. The source is the same thing it was before. It's a flat file source. So here's the flat file source. We're going to add it here. Nope, that's a destination. I can't read. Flat file source. There we go. You'll also notice Excel is available here. CDC for change data capture, raw files, XML, that sort of thing is always available. If you want to use another server, you can also use OLEDB as your source too. You can also just have SQL Server as your source and destination. But I use SSIS for Oracle as well. That's something I started using a lot, is using SSIS for Oracle tasks. Even if they had nothing to do with SQL Server, I could still get a lot done inside of Oracle, moving data around and stuff. So Oracle has its own tool set, and there's plenty of tools that work with both Oracle and SQL Server and that type of stuff, but so does SSIS. And again, it's free. So I was very comfortable in it, so that's why I kept using it. All right, so flat file source, we're gonna double click on this to open it, and you'll notice that it asks us to create a new connection. It doesn't let us choose anything. And the connection we'll want to create, first of all, you'll notice it looks very similar to the import and export wizard. That's because it is. The import and export wizard that you run in SSMS is actually just a very small compressed SSIS package that you create. That's why at the end of that wizard, it asks you, do you want to save this as an SSIS package? So just in case you didn't know. All right, we're going to create a new flat file connection, and the connection manager name is going to be AMS2 CSV DDSR. I don't know, something. And I'll name this flat file. Okay, the description is connection for AMS2 flat files. And you'll notice that I keep calling it AMS2 for Automobilista 2. That's because I don't want to share this with my other simulators like Assetto Corsa Competizione, F1 2024, Euro Truck Simulator, all that stuff. Each one is going to have a different structure, and so I want to dedicate this one to AMS2 by itself. Now, the file name. You can make this dynamic, but the very first time you run this, you need to use a real file. So the very first time you run this, I'm going to go ahead and pick my Spa di Lara file that we've been working with the whole time. I'm going to update this to be correct as well, right? The delimiter, the text qualifier, I'm going to make it a quote. Header row delimiters is good. Header rows to skip is good. And again, I go to columns here. I make sure that the tab is the delimiter. It already realized that, but I want to make sure it did it. Then I go to advanced, and again, I'm going to highlight everything and switch it to 4000. That's a nice, neat shortcut of how to do it. Is go to the first one, go to the last one, hold shift and hold them all and select them all, and then change the value here. Then I'm going to go to the preview. Going to make sure that my data looks good. There we go. We are all set. Going to hit OK. Then I want to make sure that I like nulls in my database. So I'm going to retain nulls from the source as null values in the data flow. I'm going to go to columns, and you can see that for each input column, there's an output column. You can name these differently if you wish, like O underscore car ID, O underscore track ID. I don't want to do that. I'm just going to leave them. If you want to choose what happens on errors, you can always use this error output. You can tell it to failed package. You can tell it to ignore, redirect, all sorts of cool stuff. Redirect is a really cool one because it'll redirect it to like bad data, for example. All right, now I'm going to hit OK. And there's our flat file source. I'm going to call this one AMS2 CSV flat file. And now what do we need? We need a destination, and that destination happens to be SQL Server. So I need either an ADO.NET destination or an OLEDB destination. Now, what I like to do is I like to create both types of connections, because there's usually something that OLEDB allows me to do that ADO won't, or that ADO will allow me to do and DBO or OLEDB won't. So basically I just create the connections for both of them at the same time, and if I need to resolve an issue, then I'll switch to OLEDB, and that 9 times out of 10 will resolve whatever issue I'm having, whether it's a data type or truncation or some handling of parameters. I don't know, but usually that's what's going to solve it, is switching from ADO to OLEDB or switching back. I don't know how to explain that to you other than that's what I use, and that's the method I've been using for as long as I've been working with SSIS, since 2011 or so. No, 2012 is when I started working with SSIS, so 12 years. Okay. All right, so we need a destination. We'll go ahead and create 2 connections. Number 1, we'll create a new OLEDB connection to our SQL Server. And you can see that there's already one here because I already made it, but I'm going to go ahead and start again. We're going to click New. And it says the specified provider is not supported. Please choose a different provider and connection manager. That's cool. I'm going to go up here and say native OLEDB. I'm going to switch that to Microsoft OLEDB provider for SQL Server. Why are there 2? Is one of them smaller? Oh, driver and provider. I want the provider. I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to type in my server name. Then I'm going to switch my authentication to SQL Server, type in my user, and I'm going to click Save My Password. Now, just to confirm that my username and password worked, I'm going to click the drop down, and if I get databases back, that means my login was successful and I can go ahead. I can also test the connection. That's absolutely fine. So there we go. I've set up my OLEDB connection. I'm going to hit OK, and now I have one right here. I'm going to hit OK again, and here we can see that there is a named connection. I like to make sure that I know this is my OLEDB one. I like the descriptive name it has. It has the server name, it has the database name, and it has the username. But I like to add something special at the end, so I'll right click it, rename it, and say SSIS user underscore OLEDB or OLE, just so I know that this is an OLE connection. Then I'm going to add one more as an ADO.NET connection. I'm going to hit new. I'm going to do the same exact thing. Choose my credentials. Then my encryption, I'm going to leave that as is. I'm going to hit save my password. And sometimes you'll need to trust the server certificate. For me, if I do that, it doesn't let me do anything. See, it It says test connection failed because of an error initializing the provider. The keyword is not supported trust server certificate, so I actually can't. And when I do it again, I can actually see, let's see, test connection succeeded. And let me see if I can browse here, because it doesn't seem to let me. Okay, I'm just going to type in data-driven sim racing, I guess, or I can hit refresh here, but I'll just type in data-driven sim racing. And then I will test the connection. It looks good to go, so I'm going to hit OK. You don't have to enter a database name, and it can really just be any database that you want it to be. The reason I enter a database name is just to be a bit more precise about anything. If you fully qualify all of your stuff, you will actually be able to use all databases across your server, but I like to pinpoint it to one database. Hit OK here, hit OK again, and now I can see that I have my connection. I'm going to rename it again to ADO. Now we're good. We have both of our connections. I'm going to go ahead and just create an all-ADB destination to start with. And right now you'll see this red X. It just means there's no input for it. So it needs data to flow to it. It's a destination, but it doesn't have a source. So all I do is click on this source. I use the blue arrow to connect it down to my destination. And you can see now that there's a line that goes down to it. You'll notice that when I click here, there's a red line as well. That red line is for your bad data. If you want to have a table that just houses your bad data, your data that's not able to be pushed through, that's where you would be able to put it. You create another destination with that bad data, and you can output all sorts of cool stuff to it. So you know which rows were bad. So here I have an error. I'm going to double click on this to fix it. And basically it needs to know what table I want to push to. Well, I want to go ahead and push it to this same table, which currently has 48,000 rows. So I'm actually going to truncate it. Why am I going to truncate it? Well, because I want to make sure that the data structure exists. My table has to exist. So I would normally have to create this table anyway. So what I'm going to do is allow it to go through. But now the table is completely empty, has 0 rows. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that one and pick that table. And here I can see the ETL table. The data access mode, I usually do table or access view fast load, so I can load it quick. I'm going to keep my nulls. And here you can say how many rows per batch you want. That's absolutely fine as well. Here in the mappings is where SSIS's magic happens. Here's where you can map the different columns, what column goes where. If they are named the same in your destination table, it will auto-complete this for you. If they are not named the same, you will have to do this work manually. So that's why I like to name my columns in my destination table with the same names as my sources. Then for error output, you can again choose what happens based on different errors, whether it's truncation, whether it's a bad row, that sort of thing. So it looks like I'm done here. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And it tells me that there's an error. Now, what error is it? It says column car ID cannot convert between Unicode and non-Unicode. And it's like, wait, why is that? Well, the reason for that is because here in my columns of the source, or in my flat file, let's take a look at the flat file. We have my code page is 1252, and it's not Unicode. So the data types that it chose were string DTSR. So what can I do? Or why is it failing? String, it's just a string, it's a varchar, everything's good. But then if you look at the structure of the table, these are all N varchars. And SSIS data types for N varchar is DTWSTR, not DTSTR. This would fit perfectly in a varchar, but not in an N varchar. So I'm going to, again, highlight car ID, highlight wing setup with the shift key. And now I have every column selected. I'm going to change the data type to Unicode string, DTWSTR. Then I will hit OK. And it says it needs to be reset. So I'll click in here, I get lots of errors. That's okay. I'm going to replace the metadata and then go to columns, make sure that's good, and hit OK. And now both errors went away. So now I have my destination. I'm going to rename that and call it ETL underscore, and then whatever the table name is here. Yes, I like to name my components very long names because at least I'm not left guessing. You may think it's ridiculous, and you're welcome to do so, but I like to name my destinations after where they're going, just so I don't have to click in them to see. Also, I don't get to click in them when I'm reviewing the history of this package. Like when I'm reviewing a log, if my log says failed on component 3, that's not very descriptive. And what do I have to do? I have to go open the package and see what component 3 is actually doing. Here, I know this is my destination and it shows up as the name of the task in the log. So that's a little tip for you there. If you have to look at stuff in your logs all the time, make sure you name your components correctly and you won't have to guess at what it's doing. All right, so we are good to go. We have our destination set up. We have our source set up. We're going to go ahead and save this. And we're going to hit execute task. And let's see if it works. I'm hoping it does. All right, we can see it's running. If we want to know what's going on in it, we can double click on this and we can see all the rows that are importing. And it's a little faster than our import and export wizard, but it's really not that much faster. We're looking at 48,000 rows, but really, I don't care. I'm okay. If I save this package and automate it, I can just walk away. And I can also tell SQL Server to execute this every morning so that someone drops a new file in, I execute it, or the system executes it, and I don't have to worry. I like to use SSIS as an orchestrator. Sometimes people will use it as the one that does the actual work. Sometimes they'll use it as a validation tool. I like to primarily use it as an orchestrator. I tell it what to do. Even if I could get the jobs done in stored procedures and tables and temp tables, I will create those components in SQL Server, but then I will go ahead and orchestrate them using SSIS. And a good example of that, I'm going to give you, let me make sure first that we're not running into an ad again. Okay, yeah, we have a few minutes before an ad. So a good example of that is stored procedures that need to run at the same time. Let's say you had 5 stored procedures that you need to run at the same time. In SQL Server, how would you do that? Well, you would set up agent jobs for every single one of those stored procedure and schedule them all to run at the same time. And that's cool. No problem with that. But that's 5 jobs you have to maintain, etc. But what if you could create those 5 stored procedures, leave them in the system, and then use SSIS to tell it to fire them all at the same time, and then run that one package with one job in SSIS? That would be a little bit more convenient. And let's say each one of those is just not just a stored procedure, but also several other things about multiple stored procedures that depend on the one before it, that sort of thing. You want to be able to easily do that, and you can do it with SSIS. All right, so it looks like we had an error here. It's probably like a network thing because my SQL Server is not very strong. Yeah. I'm pretty sure this is just a network thing. If you want to know exactly what it is, task buffer failed. Let's see if we can find. You can usually right click and copy the error code. So I'm going to try to copy the error code and paste it here. Row disposition has some error codes which you can, I'm sure, go download and look at. I'm pretty sure it's a resource issue. Yeah, it's a network error. And it's because my machine is not very powerful, so it can't run these for tasks that take such a long time. Sometimes it drops the connection very quickly, and in SSIS, that breaks everything. But you can see here that it's not super fast, but it'll still get it done. So again, what I was saying earlier is if you want to run two things in parallel, you can technically run those two things in parallel. All you have to do is copy and paste it, and suddenly I can run both of these tasks. I can set this up to be a little bit different, and it can be run in parallel. Regarding copy pasting, you want to be really, really careful. I don't like to copy and paste things across packages. We've all done that whole thing where we copy and paste components across packages, and then you go to run it, none of it works. You're diagnosing it for 4 hours only to realize it was probably due to some copy paste error. The primary issue for me has been, if you go into properties, you'll see that this component has a component ID, which is a GUID. And usually if there's tasks inside of this, they will have the dependency of the GUID. They will have the GUID of the one that they originated with, and maybe SSIS tripped up when it was trying to give you when it was trying to copy it. So I copying and pasting like this is fine. I would not copy and paste across packages if I were you. I'd much rather take the time to rebuild whatever it is if I'm doing it across packages. Okay, so now we're gonna go in here. We're gonna use the same flat file as the source, but instead of the destination being OLEDB, we're actually gonna have it be ADO.net. And again, this is just in case you ran into some sort of issue. So we have an ADO.net destination. We're gonna connect it, and then we're gonna choose the values. So choose the table we want to import into here. We're gonna have it use bulk import if it can, and we're gonna choose our ETL table. We'll go to mappings, make sure all the mappings are correct. You can adjust any error outputs you want, and suddenly we're okay. We're gonna do two things over here. Number one, we're gonna truncate this table, and we're also going to copy the name. Because again, I'm gonna rename my destination to be ETL underscore and then the table name. And that's it, we're okay here now. What I'm gonna do is rename this component to just be ADO, and this component to be OLE. And the one I want to run is the ADO one. So I can technically just disable this one and right click and execute task, or I can just hit play as long as there are no components that are not disabled to run. So we'll go ahead and try this one out and make sure that it works. Right click, execute task. And here we can see that it's running. We can see that it's not much faster. So that's okay. I would just let it run. And maybe this one won't have the errors that I experienced just now. Maybe it will run a little bit faster as it gets going. Possible. I'm not really 100% sure, but I'm going to go ahead and stop it. And here, now we have our data. We have at least 1,700 columns. So this may seem really simple at first and like, why would I waste my time doing this? But the difference with this is that you can keep stacking things on. You can move the file from one folder to the other first with SSIS and say, oh, I'm going to move this, anything I find in the import directory, I'm going to import it. And then that file, I'm actually going to move it to an archive directory so I don't have to worry about that. And all of these components can run at the same time. Also, if you want to import it into multiple servers, you can do that with SSIS as well. Just create a connection for each one and push it through. Let's see how we're doing on ads. Okay, yeah, it's going to ping us for ads pretty soon. So what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and take a quick ad break. If you're subscribed, we're just going to play GeoGuessr while we wait for folks to come back. And once we come back, we'll talk about sort of a couple different features of SSIS and even of SQL Server, and maybe just explore the data a little bit, maybe how you can ask ChatGPT for a couple of questions. So we're going to run the ad break, but I will see you very soon. All right. Let's keep exploring here. Hopefully this goes well with we're on a good run. We're on a good run. Let's see. All right, we went to beaches. I don't know where I am. This seems Nordic. Something about this is Nordic, but I can't really tell. Is there anything else? Wow, this is a really interesting one. This is a really interesting one. Well, it was 2020 and Google. This is all I have to go by right here. And I just don't know. I don't recognize the language. I'm not really sure. I'm a little lost here. So, oh, here's a flag, but Swiss? I'm gonna try Switzerland. Wait, but Switzerland doesn't... Is it Swiss? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's Swiss. Finland. Looks like Norway, says FLX95. I think you're right. Let's go Norway. Let's go Norway. Somewhere on the beach or somewhere along the beach. Oh, Oslo's a coastal city. I didn't even know that. So let's try let's like Oslo. What do we have? Latvia. Sure. Let's pretend that that never happened. FLX95. By the way, hope you're doing well. Hope you are having a great day so far. Let's go to towers. Denny Way 76. That is a gas station I have not seen in a while. Okay, so Yulcher says privet from Russia. Did that seem like Russia on that one? I guess it may have seemed similar to Russia. Russia's fairly close. They're close to Western Europe there. Hope you're doing well as well, Yulcher. Hope you're having a great day so far. Thanks for being around. All right, here, I don't know, Brazil Fest. Okay. But man, this seems sort of deceiving. Yulcher, thanks you so much for the follow. Hope you are doing well and welcome. FLX95 says, never mind, they're very similar. That's all right. I don't know what I'm doing here, so I think we're good. Okay, we have a Brazil Fest, and I thought that was going to be welcome back, by the way, from ads. Let's see. We have Denny Way and Broad Street, and we're running out of time too. It's 1 minute. This is, every time I say this is the US, Element Future says Seattle Center. Hope you're doing well. Element Future says Seattle Center. Where do you see Seattle Center? Seattle Center. Wow, I'm blind. Thank you so much. Let's go with Seattle. Didn't I go to like towers? Wasn't the category towers? And there's literally the space needle. Oh, I am an expert. Aren't you glad that this isn't like a GeoGuessr stream? If this was a GeoGuessr stream, I'd either be really popular because of how terrible I am, or really unpopular because I have no idea what I'm doing. But regardless, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I thought the Space Needle was like somewhere up here. There it is. Space Needle. Element Future says, sounds like you had a good Christmas party. Absolutely. I definitely played this in Thanksgiving with my family. For Christmas, I didn't. I think I tried to play this, but I don't think we had time. We did a lot of VR during Christmas. That was a lot of fun. Hope you had a good one as well, Element Future. All right, we're gonna do one more and then we'll switch back over. We'll go to castles, and I'm lost again. Ooh, is that a Saab? That's a Saab 9X, I think they were called. They were the Chevrolet Trailblazer clone from Saab when they were owned by GM. Okay, this, I don't know. It's very lovely wherever it is. I sort of get like Netherlands vibes because of the bridge, but I don't think it's a castle there. Maybe Germany, maybe France, maybe UK, but can't be UK because the windshield wipers are facing the right of the car, so can't be anywhere in UK. It has to be either France or somewhere. I wanna say Netherlands. I'm gonna go Holland just because. I'm gonna go Amsterdam. And I was completely wrong. It's Austria. Oh, is it Austria or is it Germany? It's Austria. I knew that. We all knew that. It's a good thing we do data and not guess. It's a good thing we're not a GeoGuessr stream. All right, I'm gonna stop there for GeoGuessr because I want to show some of the data and how you can use it to basically come up with interview questions for yourself. Now, this doesn't really have much to do with SSIS or PowerShell or the import wizard. This is just me telling you what you can do once you have your data inside the database. Whether you use Live SQL, that's absolutely fine. You can use its wizard to import, which maybe I should do a stream on that, how to import that data. That's a good one to know for the future. But once you have that data in, so because I need the whole data set to be in here, I'm going to go ahead and truncate this table, and I'm going to use the fastest one that we found during this session, which was DBATools. Everything else was looking like it was going to take about half an hour, but good old DBATools took us about 21 seconds. So let's try it. And there it is. It's going, and it'll be done fairly soon. 48,000 records it's able to import in 21 seconds. That's bananas. That's absolutely bananas. So if you haven't used DBATools, please start using it. Listen. Here's what you can do, okay? You can tell your boss that it took you 2 hours to import this data. And you can just use DBATools where it takes you 2 minutes. I'm not going to tell anybody. Your secret is safe with me. Go for pizza or go get more work done. If you have to tell your boss or you have to tell your team, like, oh man, I spent it was like 2 hours me in front of the computer just, getting this thing to work, and you were done in 2 minutes. I'm not going to tell anyone. Anyway, 23 seconds for 48,000 records. Now we can see that we have everything. We have all the records here, 48,000 of them. Now, I want to tell ChatGPT, hey, can you give me some questions about this that I can check out, like write some SQL queries about. So that was actually a question on Reddit yesterday that I answered, is sort of like, hey, explore the data. If you're nervous about interviews, a good way is recording yourself. I'm not saying go live on Twitch like this. I'm saying just put your phone's camera right in front of you and just try to record. Oh my God, my chat froze. I'm so sorry, Element Future. Element Future says, look at the architecture on the other side of the river. No, that's not the Netherlands. I live in the Netherlands. I'm so sorry, Element Future. Give me a second here. Let me reset my chat screen because I look at this camera here. This camera here is actually a teleprompter. You can probably sort of see it right here in this second camera that I'm waving to right now. I look at this one and I just didn't see any chat, but it's because it likes to freeze every like 20 seconds. I probably have to take a look at why that's going. So I apologize, Element Future. You were desperately trying to help me out and I didn't even see that. So that's very cool that you live in the Netherlands. Like I vaguely remember you mentioning that. Oh, I think it was on your when I downloaded Race Element, I think the spot where I was able to buy you coffee or something like that you have the donations, I think that's where it said it. But so sorry about that. Thank you. For those of you who are not aware of Element Future and their amazing tool, I'll do a quick shout out to Element Future here. And I think it's raceelement.com. Is it raceelement.com? Let me quickly head over. Raceelement.com. I can never remember if it's S or elementfuture.com. I think works, right? Elementfuture.com. Nope. Race Element. Help me out here. Element Future. Maybe I should just Google it. There you go. Race.element. Race.elementfuture.com. I know what I'm doing. I promise. Let me just pop that in here. It's a really cool tool. You've probably seen these. If you watch any sim racing videos, you've seen people that have live telemetry on their screen. Chances are they're using Race Element from Element Future. It allows you to basically overlay when you're streaming, overlay your telemetry. It'll even record some stuff and help you manage things like race setups in Assetto Corsa Competizione, in Automobilista, Euro Truck Simulator. So chances are, if you've ever seen someone stream sim racing or any sort of simulation, you've probably seen Element Future's tools in use. They're super cool. And I have been meaning to reach out to you, Element Future, because I am no good at setting these up. So maybe you and I can do like a private session where you can help me set it up if you don't mind, because I really want to get them using on the stream, but I haven't been able to get a good way. It's probably because my garbage like Streamlabs and OBS setup. All right, so let's go back to the data set, right? We already have our 48,000 records, and we want to ask ChatGPT. Element Future says, oh, like that, just reach out to me on Twitch or Discord. Thank you. I absolutely will. I've been meaning to do so for such a long time, and I just haven't gotten around to it. So thank you in advance. Okay, so we're going to look at a file, and there's a trick here when you want to ask it things, like when you want to ask ChatGPT for interview ideas, is you want to open up the CSV file. So I'm going to open it up here. And then all you have to do is just copy these top values. Copy these top values in the top row. I'm going to go ahead and do that by placing my cursor at the top and just dragging down one before. And now I have just those values. So then I'm going to copy this. And then what I'm going to do is go to our trusty Bing chat. Chat.bing.com. You can use ChatGPT, of course. I do sometimes. I just like to show Bing chat here. Here, I'm going to say, I was able to download sim racing telemetry data using sim racing telemetry app, or using the sim racing telemetry app. I now have a file with data from a race at Spa Francorchamps, where I drove 5 laps. The columns I have in my data set are below. Can you please, because you got to say please, right? You always have to say please to our robot overlords once they take over. They'll remember you said please. Can you please give me a few questions I can answer in SQL? I'm going to tell it also I have imported this data into SQL Server for analysis. I'm going to say a few, but maybe 20 questions I can answer in SQL. Let's pretend this is for a motorsports team data analysis position. How about that? And then here are the field names. They're all right here. So it analyzes all the columns that you gave it. And then it'll give you some simple questions. What is the average lap time for each lap? Which lap had the fastest lap time? What is the total distance covered in each lap? How does the average speed vary across different laps? What is the maximum speed achieved in each lap? All of these are really cool, and you can try to answer them in SQL. It's getting to be close to our time. So I'm gonna answer like 5 of these, maybe answer like 5, or I'll at least copy 5 over to SQL Server. I'll probably only get by maybe 3 or 4 of them. But this was the exercise that we were discussing last night on Reddit, a couple of us in a thread because someone wanted to know how to sort of speak SQL. They weren't confident that they could speak it. And my answer was basically like, you probably have a lot of internal monologue going on when you're developing your queries. You maybe just need to record yourself and say it all out loud so you can see that you probably do. Because the best way to learn is with the intention to teach, in my opinion, because you'll feel a sense of responsibility like I do. All right, so let's do the first one. Let's copy these two queries, which are just plain select stars. What is the average lap time for each lap? Okay, so I happen to know, and Sim Racing Telemetry has quite a bit of information on how to properly use these CSV formats. They're right here. I'm going to put it in the chat. But I happen to know that lap num is the indicator of which lap you're on. Not only that, but I happen to know, because I did so many of these queries yesterday, I happen to know that everything's coming back in text, so you have to cast it as an integer or as a decimal for it to work for you as a number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select lap num from this table, and IntelliSense doesn't seem to be working, so I'm going to hold Control Shift and just press R, and hopefully it will behave a little bit better. So lap num, and now we have all of our suggestions here that we want. So what I'm going to do is select distinct lap num from this table, and let's see if that works. Okay, great. So now we have one record per lap, even though there's like 10,000 records per lap. Average lap time for each lap. So here I know that my lap time is the record that I want, or the column that I want. So there it is right here. I'm also going to go ahead and refresh SQL prompt because I think that's what's giving me some issues. There we go. Now I can see all the columns. So lap time is in seconds, as you can see. Okay, so I want to, first of all, I want to treat this as an integer, the lap number. So I'm going to cast it as int, as lap time. And then lap time, I also want to, but lap time is also a decimal, so I have to cast it as a decimal. I'm going to say as decimal 18.4, because I see, oh no, 5, 6, 18.6. That just means 18 numbers in total, 6 after the decimal. That's all 18.6 means as lap time. Okay, so we can see distinct right here. Something failed. It's because I didn't close this parentheses here. Okay, and we can see that this looks a little bit weird. Why does it look weird? It's because I need the max of lap time. Max lap time, because this takes your lap times it records it as you're going. So what's going on? It says it's invalid in the select list. That means I need a group by for it. It's even telling me I need a group by for it. You can see the error message right here, group by clause. So it's even hinting. And sometimes I'm just like, SQL Server, if you knew, why didn't you just, do it for me? But then I wouldn't have a job if it was that easy, right? So now I can see the lap times are in seconds. I have a special function that I created to be able to convert those seconds into standard time, like hour, minute, second. So I'm going to invoke that function, or call it. And that function is called data-driven simracing.dbo.udf convert or get time from seconds. So instead of, the value that I'm going to pass in there is this seconds one that I had right here. And let's see if that works for me. And there we are. We can see that my first lap was 238. My second lap was 241, 332, 225, and 223. By the way, if you're looking for this code for this function, I'm going to include it when I include my scripts in the Google Drive when we see it here. So you will have access to it. Okay, so that's the first one, average lap time. Oh, that's actually the maximum. This question, now that I read it again, it doesn't make sense. You can't have an average lap time for each lap. You can just have whatever the lap time was. Technically speaking, you could take the average of everything and not group it by the lap, right? That would be, this would be lap time by lap, and this would be average lap time over here. If I just take this and copy it and not group by anything, then it'll do it for the entire record set. So now my average lap time was 3:32. So that would be an average lap time, all laps. Okay, sweet. So that's question 1. Which lap had the fastest time? Technically, we've already answered that by getting all of them, but let's just play along and select it. And then here, we'll just order by. You can either be lazy and order by 2. Column 1, column 2. You can say order by 2 descending. I do not recommend this method unless it's a sort of ad hoc query. If you're doing this in an interview, never use the 2. I'll appreciate that you know it, but I'll also think you're very reckless, because at any point someone can add a column and then suddenly your 2 is for a completely different column. And I actually need it to be ascending, right? So what I'm going to do is actually do the full value ascending, because in the world of motorsport, the lower the better, right? So my fastest lap was a 143 seconds, so 2 minutes 23 seconds and 830 milliseconds. What is the total distance covered in each lap? Okay, that one as well. I can pretty much do that one. There is a column called lap distance. So what I actually want is to replace that, or I can just add it on. I can say, what is the lap distance? And here is the column, lap distance. That lap distance is in meters, I want to say. So that's an interesting thing as well here, is that the lap distance is in meters. So I'm going to say just max of cast this lap distance as decimal 18.2 as lap distance. And I need to close one more. That cast always gets me when I'm working with decimals. Oh, now it's completely messed up. Should we try this again? Let's see where the error is. If I start removing stuff, like if I remove max, does it give it to me? No, it doesn't. So I need to add max in and one more decimal, and that's where we should get it. There we go. So here's the lap distance. Ooh, you can see that the max distance here was only 209 for lap 5, because we're still ordering by that, right? If we order just by the lap number like this, you'll see that. Now, what is that? That's the very last lap, was just a cooldown lap, and I probably exited as soon as I stopped. We can probably just validate that by just showing. So it was my fastest lap, but then lap 6, which it doesn't show here because it wasn't a valid lap, was my cooldown lap, and I just quit halfway through the lap. So that's what we're looking at here. It's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 laps. So lap 4. Oh, why do I have lap time here? It's lap number. How could I mess that up? It's called lap num. Okay, so there we go. We have lap num here, and lap 4 is actually lap 5. So if I want to, I can actually just say +1 here and copy that. Make sure I copy that down here as well. And now I can sort of simulate lap 5 right here. It's pretty convenient. Okay, total distance covered by each lap. And as a trick, I can also tell if the total distance was near the entire track length. If you remember correctly, we had a value called track length before. So I'm actually just going to copy this here, this lap distance, and I'm going to switch this value to track length, which is right here. So this is track length. And now if we run it again, we can see that the max track length is 1 more meter. So I must have taken a slightly shorter route here than the full track length. Usually when I'm determining whether or not the lap was valid, I'll compare it against the track length dynamically and just confirm that I traveled the entire length of the track minus about 40 meters or 30 meters, depending on which track I'm at. All right, so that's that question. How does the average speed vary across different laps? Okay, so let's bring it in again. Same exact query that we've had, but instead of here, what we'll do is we'll grab the average speed. Now, the speed here, when it's logging it, is actually measured in meters per second. Right, so the output that I get is in meters per second. You'll see that right here. When I go to velocity x, which is the output of the speed that I'm traveling at, I'll say velocity speed in MPS. I will see that the maximum speed, of course, what's going on here? Error converting varchar to numeric. Okay, that's fine. Converting velocity. Let's take a look at what velocity looks like, and for some reason it's not converting it. That's really strange, actually, because I just did this yesterday. So let's find out what's going on here. What we're going to do is we're just going to take a look at the values, and we're going to say select velocity x from this table, distinct. And let's see if something's like weird about this. I don't see any crazy values, but what we can do is use the try cast that we were discussing earlier. Try cast this value as decimal 18. Let's do 18.4 as velocity x converted. I forgot another parentheses here. So there we go. So basically the way TriCast works is anytime it's not able to convert it, it will be null. So let's see if we can do a where clause that isolates anything that wasn't able to be converted. So I'll say where this TriCast is null. And if we get any here, those are the offending records. Ooh, there it is. There it is. And so if you remember, it was PowerShell that was importing that data. That's bad. That's bad. So I need to find any records that have that speed. I'm going to remove distinct, and it's only one. And the only thing I can think of is that it's the very first record. So let me see if I can find what it is. I'm going to just say select star and also that stuff so we can see what the record looks like. Okay, lap 2. No, it was lap 1. Lap number 1. Bin. The bin is the very last bin, probably. Or just one of the bins. Something was weird. Maybe I crashed, or maybe it was a pit stop or something like that. But regardless, we need to remove that record. Or just remove the speed for it. And how do we do that? Maybe we can see what the speeds of the record before it and after it were. So let's get a little bit creative and do that. So we'll say where lap index. Oh no, we'll say and. Here we'll just have a new where clause that says where lap index equals 2 and bin index is between 1 before and 1 after, 6970, 6974 and 6976. And hopefully it'll give us the 3 records, 1 before and 1 after. We can see world positions 4, 5, and 6. 6975 was our offending record, and we can see angular velocity. All of these are pretty bad right here. So let's try one more. Let's see if we can see velocity. Velocity. Where is velocity? Velocity X. There it is, right here. So velocity X, we're just going to change it to be the same value as the one before. So I'll start with my where clause and say lap index equals 2 and bin index equals 6975. And then I'll add my from and my set. So set velocity X equals this. And now I can add my from as T and say update T. And now I know I'm only going to update one record and I'll be okay. One row affected, delete that. And now my query up here, hopefully should work. Okay, good, it worked. But here's the issue. That was only, number one, it was only max, and they asked the average. And also this is in meters per second. How do I get this into kilometers or miles? Well, I do have formulas for that, or functions for that. So I created a function called convert to something, something, something. Let's pull that up. And that's called data-driven sim racing.dbo.udf. Convert MPS to kph. And I'm going to convert this value here, this entire value that I found. I'm going to say as average speed kph. This one is average speed MPS, meters per second. And there we go. We have the average speed in kilometers per hour. So right here is 91, 180, 138, 138. This one was probably my safety car lap. So I'll do that one more time, but I'll actually do it for MPH instead because I have a function for MPH. So I'll name this one MPH. And here we go. Right here in freedom units, it was about 116 miles per hour and 184, 186 kilometers. If I want to know the variance between those, I would use functions like the lead and lag function. So the lead and lag function would allow me to investigate, quote unquote, investigate this 111. I could pull up the lag function and put this 56 right next to it. It would just give me the previous record's value. And then I just say 111 minus 56, and that's the variation. Same thing for lead. I'd be able to say 111, next lap is 85. And so the difference between 111 and 85. So I would be able to do that if I wanted to. I'm not going to because it'll take me too much time and I'll probably go through too many rabbit holes. And my daughter's probably waiting for me to go eat. So let's do the last one. What is the maximum speed achieved in each lap? We kind of already did that, but let's go ahead and just do it again. Here we have all the average speeds. So we'll say average speeds. And now I'm just going to copy this. A lot of what I do, folks, is just copy and pasting my own code. That's okay. Stop trying to rewrite. That's why functions exist, right? That's why I made the functions, is because I didn't feel like writing all this stuff again and again when I could just get it right the first time and reuse that. That's why I have liter to gallon, MPS to kph, MPS to miles per hour. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. No one's going to think you're cooler because you write these by hand every time. In fact, I as an interviewer or as a manager might think you're being a little bit inefficient. So we have max speeds here, and we're just going to switch everything from average to max. Max, max, max. Super max, max, max. And we'll switch this to max. Switch that to max. And now we have everything solved. And this would be a table that I'd be able to even put into like Excel or Power BI because it's a summary table by lap. You can just keep adding aggregates to this by lap number. And it's pretty cool. So here I was adding max speed. So you can see max speed in meters per second, in kilometers, and also in miles per hour. I would expect this to be really, really high, actually, because it's SPA, but this is a Formula 3 car. So 230 kilometers is about what I was gonna extract from this car. Okay, so again, that's how you can sort of use Copilot or ChatGPT to sort of get some interview questions automatically. And hopefully that helps you with interviewing stuff, because it's cool because you get to create your own interview questions for data that you're interested or data that's relevant to the industry that you like. There's all sorts of other cool websites out there as well. If you don't want to take this approach, there's all sorts of data websites. We were just talking to the founder yesterday on Reddit of Data Lemur. Data Lemur is one of the websites that does that, so that one's really cool. What's the other one? LeetCode, HackerRank. All those are very good to practice your data skills as well. So I recommend all of those, whichever one you like the most. That's the best one to use, I think. Whatever approach works for you. And LiveSQL. LiveSQL, of course, is a really good one, but if you use LiveSQL, you'd have to use sort of like ChatGPT to tell you the questions, because they don't have a lot of stuff on their own. They do have modules like the Dev Gym that allows you to get daily exercises for development and administration as well, and it's completely free. All right, I'm done babbling stuff. So I am going to go have lunch with my family, possibly come back and maybe do this same stream in Spanish again. Just because it's fresh in my mind. I want to make sure that our Spanish viewers are able to also get the most out of these and ask any questions if they so desire. But for now, maybe we can finally find a channel to raid. It's been a while since I've raided anyone. Let's see if I can find anyone who is online right now that I would that I can raid into. Pirate Software's on. You should just chill with Pirate Software if you want to. How about Adam Learns Live? It's been a while since I've been in Adam's Learns Live, so we'll go ahead and raid them, and let's see how that goes. Search and filter, Adam Learns Live. There we go. All right, so if you like what you see here, go check out Adam Learns Live, give him a shout, say hi, and I hope you all have a good one. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me on my socials, which will be on the chat. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Thank you. Have a good one.